In the early 2000s, we almost got a Superman movie written by J.J. Abrams that came very close to featuring Brendan Fraser as the Man of Steel and Robert Downey Jr. as Lex Luthor. Not only that, but eventual Superman actors Brandon Routh and Henry Cavill both auditioned for Superman during this film's casting process and would be rediscovered by Superman Returns director Bryan Singer and Man of Steel director Zack Snyder respectively based on their screen test for this film, which promised to be a high-octane spectacle with action sequences that would have rivaled, and in some ways even surpassed, those in Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. So let's dive in and find out why it was never made and also take a look at what could have been Superman Flyby. Following Christopher Reeve's last outing as Superman in the quest for peace, Warner Bros. Spent close to a decade trying to reboot the franchise, before coming incredibly close with the infamous Superman Lives, which would have been directed by Tim Burton, starred Nicolas Cage, and saw the Man of Steel fight a giant spider. As the film's budget began to balloon, it would be cancelled at the 11th hour, after the box office failure of Batman and Robin gave executives cold feet over Superman Lives' commercial viability. A few years later, Warner Bros. Would try again and hired J.J. Abrams, hot off creating the show's Felicity and Alias, but years away from making a name for himself as a feature film director with films like Mission Impossible 3 and Star Trek, to write the script for a new Superman film that was intended as the start of a trilogy. Titled Superman Flyby, the film opens as Krypton is in the midst of a civil war, with Jor-El and his brother Ty-Zor on opposite sides. Amid this turmoil, an ancient religious prophecy looms over Kryptonian society, foretelling the arrival of a savior who will bring balance and hope. Jor-El believes his son is the one destined to fulfill this prophecy, and the true heir to the throne of Krypton. Jor-El's brother, Ty-Zor, eventually seizes power after detonating a powerful bomb, leaving the planet looking like a planetary apple with a bite taken out of it. Though Krypton hasn't been completely destroyed, the planet now faces the risk of falling out of orbit. Ty-Zor orders his forces to kill Kal-El, worried that Kal-El is a threat to his rule if he fulfills the prophecy. To protect his son and give the prophecy a chance to unfold, Jor-El sends Kal-El to Earth, where the planet's yellow sun will grant him extraordinary abilities, keeping him safe from Ty-Zor's forces. Jor-El hopes that one day Kal-El will return to Krypton, challenge Ty-Zor, and liberate their people from his tyrannical rule. From here, the story unfolds as one would expect from a Superman origin story. Clark is found by Jonathan and Martha Kent, and we see him grow up and discover his abilities. To explain why Clark wears glasses, his parents make him custom frames out of lead-spec lenses, after Clark struggles to control his X-ray vision. Concurrently, we also meet a young Lex Luthor, who's working as an elementary school teacher, preaching about humanity's failings and the need to unite the world under a single central authority. Eventually, he stumbles upon a crashed Kryptonian spaceship, one of the pods sent by Ty-Zor in the hunt for Kal-El. Inside, he encounters a dying Kryptonian soldier, and is exposed to alien technology and knowledge that radically transforms him. This encounter grants Lex profound insight into the existence of Superman and Krypton, and significantly enhances his intellect, although it comes at a cost, as the exposure causes his hair to fall out. The story eventually jumps ahead to the present, as Lex has risen to prominence as the head of LexCorp, a powerful corporation that has become a leader in defense and technology, giving Lex the resources and influence to further his agenda of global domination. Meanwhile, Clark Kent arrives in Metropolis and secures a job at the Daily Planet, where he meets the intrepid and sharp-witted Lois Lane, who is actively investigating Lex Luthor. In fact, Clark and Lois met briefly years earlier in college during a chance encounter at a party, though Lois barely remembers it. Worried about what Lois will uncover, Lex sabotages Air Force One while Lois is aboard to interview the president, as Lex attempts to get rid of her and the president. What follows is a sequence we've all become familiar with, as it would eventually be repurposed for Superman Returns, as Superman makes his first public appearance, saving the crashing plane and setting it down at a baseball stadium, a symbol of Americana. Jonathan Kent, overwhelmed by the shock and excitement after hearing about it, suffers a fatal heart attack, and while Clark is devastated, Martha encourages him to save other people, as he closes his eyes, listens to the cries for help around the world, and then goes and saves people. Eventually, Superman meets Lex, who is already aware of his true identity as Kal-El. Lex attempts to persuade Superman to join him, presenting a grandiose plan to save the planet by uniting humanity under a single global authority, eliminating individual countries, and even exterminating those who he deems unworthy. Superman is horrified by Lex's ruthless vision and outright refuses to join him. Frustrated and infuriated by the rejection, Lex activates a beacon on the Kryptonian pod he found years ago. Back on Krypton, Ty-Zor receives Luthor's transmission and sends his son, Ty-Zor, who is the same age as Kal-El, to Earth to kill him and destroy Earth for harboring him, as we watch Ty-Zor kill Jor-El's wife while he's imprisoned. Back on Earth, Superman and Lois meet on the Daily Planet rooftop before he takes her flying, similar to Superman 78. In fact, while the film tries to reimagine some parts of Superman's origin story, the first half of the film hits many of the same beats as Superman 78. Eventually, Ty-Zor lands on Earth with a team of Kryptonian soldiers and is greeted by Lex, who offers to take them to Superman. Lex then kidnaps Lois Lane while she's snooping around one of his properties, investigating his secret experiments, and uses her as bait to lure Superman into a trap, setting the stage for an intense battle in Metropolis between Superman and Ty-Zor. During the fight, Lex reveals his secret weapon, kryptonite, which he discovered was lethal to Kryptonians after it killed the alien who arrived years earlier in search of Kal-El. Lex uses the kryptonite to weaken and ultimately kill Superman. However, Superman's death sends him into the astral plane, where he meets Jor-El. In this otherworldly encounter, Jor-El reveals the full truth of the prophecy, and, in a final act of sacrifice, gives his own life force to resurrect Superman, empowering him to fulfill his destiny. As Ty-Zor unleashes a Kryptonian rouser, a massive, destructive machine reminiscent of Zack Snyder's World Engine, he attempts to blast a colossal hole into the Earth, mirroring the devastation his father inflicted on Krypton as he tries to leave the planet looking like a planetary apple with a bite taken out of it. However, Superman intervenes, destroys the rouser, and then fights Ty-Zor through the streets and skies of Metropolis before Ty-Zor is killed by a razor-sharp chunk of kryptonite. The film ends with Superman boarding the very craft that brought him to Earth, setting off on a journey back to Krypton to fulfill his destiny, save Krypton, and lay the foundation for the second chapter of this planned trilogy. So what went wrong? Following Rush Hour 2 and Red Dragon, Brett Ratner was hired to direct. However, he found it difficult convincing some of Hollywood's emerging leading men to play the Man of Steel, due to having to commit to 3 movies, saying, "They'll play this character for 10 years because I'm telling one story over 3 movies, and plan to direct all 3 if the first one is as successful as everyone suspects." Ratner's top choices were Josh Hartnett and Jude Law, but both would turn it down, even though they were offered $100 million for 3 movies. Hartnett didn't want his life to be swallowed up by playing the character, and also worried about typecasting, while Jude Law felt that as an Englishman he wasn't the right fit. Even Paul Walker was offered the part, and remarked that he could have made $1 gazillion and probably have bought his own fleet of jets or his own island, but felt the part wasn't him, saying that his favorite brand of running shoes cost $23. Brendan Fraser also screen tested, but he admits his heart wasn't fully in it and he was worried about being typecast. He also claims he lost the part due to studio politics. Ratner wanted to round out his cast with many of the same actors he just worked with on Red Dragon. For example, he wanted to cast Anthony Hopkins as Jor-El and Ralph Fiennes as Lex Luthor. Unable to find an established leading man to play the Man of Steel, and after continuously clashing with producer John Peters, most famous for making Kevin Smith put a giant spider in his script for Superman Lives.
And he's like, "Do you know anything about spiders?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, they're the fiercest killers in the insect kingdom."
Ratner would leave the project. However, a Warner spokesperson said Ratner left because he wanted to cast soap star Matthew Bomer as Superman, which Warner Brothers refused to approve because, as Matthew Bomer would speculate, was due to him coming out as gay. Director of Charlie Angel's McG would be hired to replace him. And unlike Ratner, he wanted to cast an unknown actor for Superman, shooting screen tests with then unknown actors Brendan Routh and Henry Cavill, as each wore Superman's newly designed suit for the audition, with McG preferring Henry Cavill for the part. Robert Downey Jr. was cast as Lex Luthor, while Scarlett Johansson and Selma Blair were both in the running for Lois Lane. However, Warner Brothers wanted to shoot in Sydney, Australia to save money, as they had done with The Matrix, rather than in New York City. While McG fought this decision, arguing that it was inappropriate to try and capture the heart of America on another continent, the truth was that his fear of flying ultimately led him to drop out of the project. This experience inspired him to confront that fear with his next film, We Are Marshall, which depicted a plane crash. Left without a director, J.J. Abrams would lobby hard for the job, but Warner Brothers eventually would hire Bryan Singer, hot off directing back-to-back X-Men films. Singer, instead of opting for another origin story, proposed continuing Richard Donner's iconic Superman saga, as he would pitch his idea of Superman returning to Earth after a 5-year absence, a concept that would eventually take shape as Superman Returns. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Bullets and Blockbusters for more great content.